And I'll let you know when we're live on meeting.
Okay, so nobody noticed online, right? Everybody had. And nobody said they will join anyway.
Sure, and I will both get to.
Yeah.
But
Okay, we're live on YouTube.
Okay, all right. Hit record. Good evening and welcome. I would like to now call the Cities Association of Santa Clara County Board of Directors regular meeting of March 12th, 2026 to order at 7:03 p.m. Can we have roll call, please, Charlie?
Yes. Ann Bybee. Present. Liang Chow. Here. Kelly Ramirez.
Here.
Sally Meadows.
Here.
Rajiv Bateja.
here.
Rob Moore. Maria Risto.
Here.
Okay. Carmen Montano. Or Evelyn Chua. Ken Torin.
Here.
Mark Turner.
Here.
Ellen Kamei. Or Emily Ramos. Vicky Vinker. Or Ed Lowen. Rosemary Kamei. Or Pamela Campos. Kelly Cox. Or Lisa Gilmore. Okay. Tina Walia.
Here.
Larry Klein. Or Linda Sell.
Here.
With 10, we have quorum.
Wonderful. This is time for oral communications on non-agendized items. Do we have any members of the public, any member of the public in the room who wants to speak on non-agendized item?
Oh, not for non-agenda.
Okay, anyone online?
No one online has their hand up.
Okay, then I close oral communications on non-agendized items and move on to the agenda. Let's start with the consent agenda, which is approval of the minutes from Board of Directors meeting of February 12th, 2026. Any board member wishing to pull the item from consent or a comment? Seeing none, let's take public comment. Anyone in the room on meeting minutes? Anyone online?
No one online has their hand raised.
Okay, motion to approve the meeting minutes
Move to approve.
by Turner, second.
Yep, second.
Second, Bateja. I think we don't need roll call vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Anyone abstain? No, the meeting minutes are approved unanimously. With that, we are going to move on to item number 2, which is the President's update. And this is an informational item. You know what I'm going to say? I'm thrilled to have such an engaged board this year.
What's that?
A very engaged one. There you go. Okay, you're going to keep me on my toes, my friend, this year. I know that.
I couldn't resist that. Sorry.
Yes, this is great. As some of you know, I had already started identifying and lining up speakers ahead of schedule and with the hope to align them with the priorities that the board finalized 4 weeks ago on February 12th. Based on the board's feedback to include study sessions on the 3 board priorities we approved, I took input from the executive committee 2 weeks ago. And I also want to thank a couple of board members. I can see someone here and others who reached out to me, who emailed me their suggestions or who spoke with me on the phone. So I have pivoted a little bit. Tonight, you're going to see a hybrid format. We have a guest speaker that I had already reached out to and confirmed for today. And we have a study session on one of the board priorities, as well as some organizational business to do tonight. Let's see how that goes. If you help me stay on track time-wise, the agenda should take us to about 9:15 p.m. I think it's doable. That's 60 minutes for the study sessions as requested. 45 to 60 was the ask. I'm giving you 60 minutes. Couple of quick updates. The first one is I'm really thrilled to share that the website update is on. I have signed the contract with Tripepi Smith, and the website update committee team is working with them. We're making good progress. Finally, we will have a good website which has been updated. Secondly, please hold Monday, the date Monday, August 31st of 2026 in the evening for an electrification communications forum from SVCE, co-sponsored by the Cities Association of Santa Clara County. And before someone starts thinking, I want to assure you, I have personally spoken with both SVCE and Mayor Vicky Winker to confirm this date.
What's the date again?
August 31st. It's a fifth Monday.
At what time?
Time.
In the evening, I don't know the time, it'll be something 5:30 or 6 or something like that. So I would suggest blocking 5 p.m. onwards. It won't be 4 hours, but I don't have the final time. And the forum is really intended to provide tools and information to all local elected officials in our county, the council members, so that they are empowered to combat any misinformation on electrification. So August 31st, Monday, 2026 in the evening. Lastly, a reminder, I have shared with you the deadline for working with the Community Planning Collaborative for REAP 2 is end of June. Please share with your community development departments. With that, we are on track a minute ahead of time to invite our guest speaker, Santa Clara County Assessor Nisa Fligor. It is truly my honor to introduce our assessor, Nisa Fligor, who was sworn in as the county's 23rd assessor on January 26, 2026. A longtime public servant, she previously served in various roles in the assessor's office, where she has done multiple things, including helping lead a major technology acquisition. Long list, so I'm going to skip that. She was elected to the Los Altos City Council in 2018, re-elected in 2022, served as mayor in 2021, where she advanced the city's first 100% affordable housing development, the new community center, and their annual Veterans Day parade. Parade. She's also a former president of the Cities Association of Santa Clara County and the Cal Cities Peninsula Division Board, where she, amongst other things, spearheaded initiatives such as a countywide mental health awareness initiative. Thank you, Nisa. Those who don't know this, Nisa holds a law degree from Georgetown Law and a BA in Political Science and International Relations from Florida International University. Thank you so much, Nisa. We look forward to your regional perspective as all the city councils are working on their budgets for fiscal year 26-27. Your insights on property values assessment trends would be very beneficial. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, President Walia. I feel right at home here. I'm standing at the podium, but this is really an opportunity for me to talk with all of you, because I know all of you. I said earlier that the Cities Association was my city council home for many years. As Tina mentioned, I was president of the Cities Association. And so I have been in your seats and appreciate the work that you all do and the time commitment that you make to do this work. I just want to emphasize that the work you're doing does make a difference, and having an organization like the Cities Association that allows the cities across the county to meet on a regular basis, collaborate, share ideas, even when you don't always agree, just that opportunity to talk with each other and hear what's going on in the different cities really makes a difference and improve the lives of all the residents and constituents we serve. So really just want to thank all of you for your service, and thanks for inviting me, President Walia. It's an honor to be back here as the newly elected county assessor, and thanks to many of you and all of you for your support across the county. I want to introduce Assistant Assessor Greg Monteverde and Deputy Assessor Autumn Young, who are with me here today. They wanted to be here, but I wanted them to be here even more than they wanted to be here, because just in case we get questions from, and I won't name names, I wanted to make sure that we had all the experts in the room to answer all your questions. So thank you, Greg and Autumn, for being here after hours. I just finished a campaign, as many of you know, and one of the big learnings for me last year going through the campaign was how little a lot of people know about the assessor's office, the role of the assessor's office, and the type of work we do. And I know this audience, this group knows our office, but I'll still just quickly go over our primary legal mandate is to identify and assess all taxable property in Santa Clara County. And our legal mandate is also to ensure that these assessments that we do of the taxable property are done fairly, accurately, and legally. That's it, right? That is our primary function as your assessor. We are not a tax agent. We're not the tax collector office for Santa Clara County. We also are, or the oversight is not provided by the Board of Supervisors. So we don't report to the Board of Supervisors. The oversight body is the Board of Equalization. So the State Board of Equalization, that's the body that provides the oversight for the assessor's office. When we talk about properties, this, as you know, includes residential, commercial, business, personal property, mobile homes, boats, and aircrafts. And we have every year we have an annual cycle. We have to identify, assess all these different properties so that we meet the legal deadline of June 30th to produce that assessment roll. The BOE, and I want to emphasize this because this is something that I also realized people didn't appreciate about the work we do. We're not doing our work in a vacuum. We're actually monitored, and we have to subject ourselves to an audit by the BOE every 5 years. And the record of the Santa Clara County Assessor's Office to date is an accuracy ratio of 99.41%. And former Assessor Larry Stone is going to be watching that number the next time we get audited to make sure that we don't fall below. But I have a great team in the office. And the work we do, as I said, we make sure we comply with all the applicable laws. Although it's not our primary function, we do have a legislative function. We have what's called the California Assessors Association, very similar to the City Association in the sense that it is made up of all the assessors across the state. So all 58 counties, each assessor, we're all members of the CAA body. And we meet on a monthly basis, very similar to the Cities Association. The difference in our work compared to the Cities Association's work, however, is our focus whenever we propose bills or advocate or oppose a bill, it's really focused on the administrative work in our office. It has nothing to do with policy positions or advocating amendments to the Constitution. Obviously, if there's a bill being proposed, we would definitely get involved if it's going to impact the work in our office. But our primary function as your assessor is an administrative role. We're not policymakers. And so when people hear about our legislative function, they may believe, oh, so you're policy advocates. And we're not in the sense that you think of it as a city council member. An easy example is we're all familiar with the fires in Southern California last year. And Assessor Prang, the LA Assessor Jeff Prang, he was able to advocate and work with the CAA to push through legislation that would extend the time for victims, fire victims, to file their forms. So right now, these are very tight timelines that you have to file your form to get the reduction in value and all these benefits and relief programs that are available, but they all have deadlines. And so based on what was happening in Southern California, Assessor Prang was able to work with the CAA and work with legislators in Sacramento to extend the period in the law to allow these victims to file, and also, by when they would need to complete construction. And so those are the types of bills and legislation that we get involved in. I'm just going to put, an asterisk here, as you meet as the Cities Association, and I know part of the legislative committee, you think about bills. If there's something you come across that you think somehow it will impact the work in our office, please let us know. We're happy to be partners with you on that. We just had one of our local, and I won't name names, but one of our local state representatives, he had proposed a bill and he had inserted a role for the assessor's office. And we quickly reached out to him and we said to him, that is not the role of the assessor. You're imposing a role and we don't have that expertise either. And so he quickly pulled the assessor out of that bill, but he was very appreciative of the fact that we reached out to explain to him that that's not the role of the assessor and that that's not a good place to have us in the legislation. I know this group, and I heard President Walia talk about your priorities. So whether it's public safety, healthcare, emergency preparedness, I know this group appreciates the work we do in the assessor's office because it forms the basis from the property tax bills that then generate the revenue for the work and services you all do for your constituents. Just a quick breakdown on the distribution of this revenue. Cities get 14%, the county 18%, community colleges 7%, K through 12 public schools 44%, special districts 6%, and redevelopment agencies, and yes, they're still getting tax dollars, 11%. That is the distribution across the county of the revenue dollars generated from the work we do. But I just quickly say again, we're not a tax collecting agency. We just assess property. We're not there to increase revenue or decrease revenue. We're just there to get it right. And if we do our work right and it increases revenue, that's what happens. If the revenue goes down, that's what happened. We're really there to make sure that it's fair and accurate. As I mentioned before, our annual calendar ends June 30th every year. And so we're still processing the properties from last calendar year because that will be on the June 30th, 2026 roll. Or we produce the roll by June 30th, 2026. That's for last calendar year. And that's as of the lien date, January 1st, 2026. So the data I will go through with you today, it's from last year's assessment roll because we're still doing assessments and processing the properties that will be on this coming assessment roll. So for example, the roll growth for the assessment roll closed in June 2025 was $725 billion. And Santa Clara County has the largest roll in the Bay Area, and we're fourth in the state. So LA, Orange County, and San Diego County have larger rolls than we do in the state, but in the Bay Area, we are the number one county with the largest roll. And of course, that's $725 billion. We then apply the general levy for property taxes. And so the revenue that's generated from that is roughly $7.5 billion. One of the things I was asked last year was, when I finally explained to someone what we do in the assessor's office and our role, they said, oh, so basically, your role is primarily to generate revenue, property tax revenue for these recipient jurisdictions. And I said, well, yes, that is our primary legal mandate. But another benefit from our work is that it provides valuable data on what's happening in the county. So because we're seeing what's happening in the real estate market, we know where growth is happening, we know where decline is happening, we know where development is happening in the county, and we know where it's not. We know what industries are doing well and which ones aren't. We also know where the residential market is strong and where there's recovery happening. And so the assessment growth by city, and I thought this would be, again, this is from last year, across the county, the roll growth last year was 4.15%. Compared to the year before, which was 5.39%, that is not the type of growth you want to see. But based on what was happening in the market, the real estate market last year, that was the roll growth. It was at 4.15%, but counties, cities, I was a council member at the time. You want a much higher growth, roll growth in the county happening, but this is what it was last year. The top 5 cities with the strongest roll growth last year, and this is due primarily to strong residential growth. And let me say, this is not a competition among cities. But the 5 cities with the strongest roll growth, and I'll start, I see Mayor Meadows, Los Altos was one of the top 5. Morgan Hill, Mayor Turner, Santa Clara, Saratoga, and Montserrat. And again, it's because of the strong residential market that they have in these cities. Montserrat, I think Autumn, we're saying, they only have residential. And so we know that the residential market there is very strong. The city council member, Kamei, Ellen Kamei. Oh, yeah.
I knew you were talking about
this. We have 2 council member Kameis. Now we have to do the distinction. Before it was Mayor Kamei, which made it easy. Smallest roll growth last year, so we'll see how Mountain View does this year, was Mountain View. And why it's significant is that their roll growth, so when you look at Los Altos, Morgan Hill, we're looking at roll growth from like 5 to 6%. Mountain View last year was 0.51%. And why that's significant is because the year before it was 7.69%. So a huge drop. And when we look at the data, what it shows is even though you were having multifamily projects built of affordable housing, and there's some exemptions there, and residential properties, it wasn't enough to offset the loss from the decline in the commercial properties, right? And we're seeing that with Google and other commercial properties in Mountain View. So that as I said, I love my job. We get to see the data, we get to see what's happening in the cities, and we get to make some projections. And the factors that affect role growth, reductions, exemptions, I mentioned, and exemptions are under the law. I know everybody's familiar with a proposal last year to exempt seniors from paying property taxes. But if it's not under the law, it's not part of the Constitution, it's not allowed. And so we do have some built-in exemptions. And as you can imagine, or state representatives, either through the state legislation or by voter initiative, you have these exemptions for different reasons. And so some of the exemptions we have are religious institutions, public entities, so public owned properties, they are exempt, or cities only own property, they are exempt. And so there are a list of exempt categories under the law. Another factor for role growth that we look at is the Prop 8 reduction. So under the law, if your property declines in value, you don't have to proactively reach out to the assessor. We're actually required under the law that if a property reduces in value, if there's a decline in value, we have to proactively reassess your property. Again, our role is not to increase revenue or decrease revenue. If there's a decline in value, we need to reassess it and give you that lower assessed value. And so that's why, especially what's going on in the economy right now in Santa Clara County, we're doing a lot of Prop 8 reductions. What contributes to increases? Change in ownership, new construction, and of course the Prop 13 annual 2% adjustment. How am I doing on time? I think Tina gave me till 7:30. Appeals. I know we hear a lot about appeals. Again, this is a right that taxpayers have to appeal the assessed value that we place on the roll for their property. One of the things we do in Santa Clara County, so we do the NAV card, notice of assessed value. That has to be issued November 30th when we close the roll. Property owners, you get your NAV card, and in this NAV card, we tell you what your assessed value is. You then have until September 15th to file your appeal. Santa Clara County is one of 11 counties, and this is where it's not a legal mandate. This is something we've opted to do. We're one of only 11 counties that offer what's called a free informal review process. Meaning when you get that NAV card, if you look at it and you think it's higher than what your assessed value should be, you can contact our office and we sit with you, the appraiser who conducted the assessment, sit with you, explain to you how we arrived at that assessed value. And I can't tell you the number of times we have taxpayers who will bring documentation or bring information to our team that they didn't know, and they'll adjust it because that's our job. And we resolve so many cases as part of that free informal review process. So I want to take the opportunity to spread the word. Santa Clara County has this free informal review process. One of my day one initiatives was to extend the period for this free informal review process. So now it extends from July 1st through August 8th. And so when you get your NAV cards, or when your residents in your cities or even your business owners get that NAV card, let them know if they have questions, they should reach out to us. I will say the joke I've been saying since last year. We never hear from a taxpayer who thinks that their assessed value is lower. It's always higher. So please reach out to us. And I'll just also mention, I see Steve Preminger here from the county. The clerk of the board and the county, the board of supervisors decided a couple of weeks ago to now start charging an appeals application fee. This is not the assessor's office. I want to repeat, this is not the assessor's office. This was something the clerk of the board and the county board decided that they wanted to do full cost recovery, which the law allows. Essentially, under the law, it's not required, but you have the option. And for years we hadn't done it, but they decided to do it this year. They're now seeking full cost recovery, meaning, based on the time spent from the clerk of the board, not the assessor's office, in processing these applications and that process, they can recover the fee. So it's not for profit. They're not generating any additional revenue. It's really under the law. It's a full cost recovery based on the cost of their time and the resources spent processing the application and the whole appeals process. So again, they decided to do it for residential properties. It's $290 for each application. For non-residential, it's and with residential and just it's agricultural use, residential properties up to 4 units, open space vacant land, and residential, that's $290. All other types of properties, $675, and it's non-refundable. So even if you end up prevailing at the AAB, this is non-refundable. And so it's even more important for your residents to take advantage of the assessor's free informal review process. I mentioned it was and currently, so we are busy with appeals. Like one of the things, and the priorities in the assessor's office, there are 3. We're not policy driven. When you run for assessor, when you become the assessor, it's not about housing policy, transportation policy. It's none of that I know we all run on when we run for council. It's about 3 things. It's closing the roll by June 30th. It's resolving the appeals. And right now we have 13,000 active appeals and it's growing.
Oh, wow.
Mostly non-residential because of what's happening in the market. A lot of commercial property owners are filing appeals and challenging their assessed value. And so we have to find resources to defend those appeals. A matter of fact, before I went back to the assessor's office to be part of the executive management team, I was one of the attorneys for the assessor's office for 3 years, where that was my primary job, where I would defend the assessed value my clients at the time, the assessor's office, placed on the roll. So that's the appeals. I mean, there's so much I can do, a 2-hour presentation on appeals, and what happens with appeals is what we call value at risk. And that's the difference between what we say the assessed value is and what the property owner is claiming that the assessed value should be. And that's a value at risk because if they were to prevail, then we would have to refund them the revenue amount. So for example, someone said last year, well, that's holding up the money while the appeals are pending. It's not. We still process, everything is going through, but if they prevail 2 years later, because the statute of limitations is 2 years, we do have to refund the taxpayer that amount. And so that's something to be aware of, this value at risk, and why it's even more important for us to make sure we get through these appeals as fast as possible. And Santa Clara County, again, has historically retained approximately 92% of the roll value, which, in other words, we prevail in most of the appeals filed. ADUs, again, I can do 2 hours on this, Tina. How are they typically assessed like any other new construction, such an addition? And so there's a partial property tax assessment done. So you have your primary home, you build an ADU, and I know that's something a lot of cities are doing. And you may get this question from residents. One, please feel free to refer them to us. But just as a quick response to them, yes, if they construct a new ADU, there will be a partial property tax assessment that will be added to the base year value for their primary home. And so they will see an increase based on the addition of the ADU. But there are other benefits to ADUs, and there are other reasons why we do it in Santa Clara County. And then, Councilmember Kamei from San Jose. I know San Jose has the new law on ADUs. And again, that's another hour. But in San Jose, not to give other cities ideas, but San Jose last year passed an ordinance that allows a property owner to do a lot split. If you have your primary home and you can have an ADU, and that's something they're allowing. And so we've gotten the question, how are you going to now assess? Because it's no longer just an ADU, an improvement to the primary house. It's now a separate own APN, own parcel lot. And so that's something that's differently assessed as well in our office. So if you get questions from your residents, because it's different from, you think of your sort of normal ADU. Right. Possessory interest, for example, parklets. I know you're all familiar with parklets. One of the things I did as one of my day one initiatives was to direct staff to explore increasing the low value ordinance threshold. So right now it's $10,000. And so we're looking, because the law now allows us, a law passed last year that allows us to go up to $15,000. And this would potentially benefit restaurant parklets because of their low value in your cities. And so just something to watch as we do that assessment to see if we can increase the value to $15,000. And that actually would have to be approved by the Board of Supervisors. So when this happened in 2016 and we went up to 10,000, it also came out of our office. We brought it to the board back then, it was approved. And so we would do the same thing depending on what our analysis shows. Emergency disaster preparedness, there's also a role for the assessor there. I know it's one of your priorities this year. Again, when you're residents, if something happens in your city, we have relief programs where we could either reduce, waive, defer your property tax, your residents' property tax payments. Unfortunately, as I mentioned before, all of these have timelines and all of these you have to fill out a certain form. And so it's important for them to have this information so they don't miss the deadline, because unfortunately we don't have wiggle room, a lot of wiggle room once they've passed some of those deadlines. So, if there's an emergency, even to an individual home, there's a fire, please reach out to us so that we can work with, and there has to be physical damage to the property. Lots more. I'll come back because I would love to come back, but I'll end with my theme this year is, public service through partnership. And this partnership I view as in all sectors, commercial developers, small businesses, residential property owners, and government entities, because we need to partner to do our work and also partner to make Santa Clara County work. All sectors, not just government entities, all sectors contribute to our growth here in Santa Clara County. For property taxes, we need this growth. And so when we think about the future and continuing prosperity of Silicon Valley, we need to see growth in certain areas. I like to say government is dependent on the non-government sectors to do well to drive tax revenue. And the non-government sector is dependent on government to have the revenues in order to provide the services they need, like public service, healthcare, so that we have a safe, healthy, livable, and attractive county. Thank you all. I would really appreciate you inviting me. Please reach out anytime. And I'm sure you can get my contact information from Tina. Thanks for inviting me, Tina, and all the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. We appreciate it. I really appreciate the assessor adjusting her time based on our schedule of accommodating a study session. So if we have quick comments, I will take maximum 5 minutes total. If not, we can move on to the next agenda item, which I was planning to start at 7:30. Comments, Director Page.
I just had a question about nonprofits. I believe they're not subject to property tax.
Yeah.
So there are some nonprofits that I won't name here that are flush with cash. And is there any plan to do anything about that? Is that state law? Is that okay?
It would be state law.
Okay.
And just so you know, we don't take, because you have to do a form, as you can imagine, and we don't take everything for face value. Our investigators and auditors actually do background research to figure out whether or not they really qualify. The whole lipstick on they really have to qualify as a genuine nonprofit under California law. So even these entities that you're describing, if they check all the boxes for a nonprofit, then they would be exempt. I mean, we hear this about religious organizations, and we won't name names, but the same thing with a lot of religious owned organizations in Santa Clara County, they qualify.
Yeah.
They
So there's religious, there's educational, usual suspects.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've also seen where some of these nonprofits start buying up residential real estate, and that effectively takes that revenue off the table, right?
Yes, because it's owned by the nonprofit.
Right.
So for example, in Palo Alto, what's the name of the senior community there? So we're actually looking at that right now because they recently bought new property.
There's several.
Property in Palo Alto,
Yeah.
well known. If Vicky was here, she'd remind. And they already purchased a new property, and we're looking at how that will be used. So it's not automatic again. You have to look at how it's used. It's not just the fact that they purchased this property. They're automatically going to get the exemption because they have it for the current property they have.
Thank you.
Talking of Vicky, I just picked up a message from her. Her apologies. She is in Palo Alto in a school district community listening session on the suicide situation. So she's going to come in if and when she's able to. So she wanted me to share with everyone. Another quick comment? Seeing none. Thank you so much, Nisa. Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you back here. Okay, with that, let's move on to item number 4, which is the study session, new format, automated license plate readers. And as you all know, the goal of this agenda item is to provide a fact-based overview of how cities in our county are using ALPRs and to share the information.
The presentation,
The survey results,
survey result.
not this, the other. Survey results. Yeah. So the format is, I'm going to first share the compiled survey results. Thank you so much. We reached out to all the 15 cities and 13 cities responded. Deeply, deeply appreciate you quickly responding within a short turnaround time. And after that, we'll have guest speakers, 2 guest speakers, 5 to 7 minutes each, 15 minutes of questions and answers from the board. Then I'll take public comment and board comments. And we are starting this at 7:37. So 8:37, if you'll bear with me, I'm going to end this item. And if we don't have public comment, we can talk longer. So let's start with the survey results. I'll just look right there. Please move on. There are just 4 or 5 slides I put together. As I said, 15 cities surveyed, 13 responded, and 10 are currently still using the ALPRs, and the other 3 recently discontinued use. As we all know, the first year ALPRs started in our county in any city that has been reported is 2021. Quite a few started around 2022 and 2023. Per city, the number of cameras, of course, ranges from 15 to 474, not necessarily dependent on the size of the city, and 10 of the 13 have vendor-owned cameras, and only 3 are city-owned. No surprise, all have used Flock as the vendor, and I'm happy to send the slides by email. Certainly, I'll do that tonight. And I'll have Shali send it. And the funding sources, I want you to know there are 12 responses of the 13. All 12 are using the city general fund. In addition, some are also 3 use grants and 1 uses general fund plus the resident funded programs. So it's predominantly the general fund, whatever route, it is the general fund used by every single city. Only 5 use private business or residential funding. That is allowed. This, I'm not quite sure. I try to keep the questions very high level because this seemed to me slightly different from the previous question, and 5 said no to this. Next slide, please. Regarding the governance and privacy policy, it was good to note that every single city has a formal ALPR policy, and every single city has the data retention policy. 11 of the 13 said they do conduct audits. The question about the frequency of the audit was, I got 6 responses. 1 city every 2 weeks, 1 every 30 days, 2 quarterly, and 2 annual. Data retention, 11 of the 13 said 30 days, 1 said 1 year, which I believe is in the process of changing, as we are all aware. And the data sharing answer was 10 said yes. And I think there is room for us to think through, as I was just thinking about my city. I don't want to get into opinions here. I'm very careful about the Brown Act because this is going to come up in different city councils. So I'm trying to stick to the factual data that I picked up from the survey. I have 2 more slides, then let's go to questions after that. Public safety outcomes. 12 of the 13 cities reported that the ALPR as an investigative tool is very helpful. 1 gave no response. It is not a no. There was nothing written there. The observation about whether it reduces crime, 9 said yes, 1 said no, it does not reduce crime. I'm just trying to differentiate between no response versus the answer being a no. The examples used varied. The common ones were and some did not respond to this. The common ones were organized retail theft, fewer smash and grab attempts at jewelry stores, residential burglaries and robberies, and auto theft. And I believe that's the end of it, right? Wonderful. Okay. Should we hold the question so that we can get the two speakers? I'm just trying to keep this on track, unless you have a quick question.
It was
Sa-
just about the survey questions,
Uh-huh.
which might, affect how we answered them, just to get that context.
Right.
Which is, you asked about residential programs, but really didn't give the space for at least our city to describe that some residential neighborhoods could participate with the police, but it wasn't a funded program. So that I wasn't able to add that level of detail. The other point was that data sharing didn't allow us to really differentiate whether you said all of California or you said 4 counties like
Or
we
whether
did.
it's inbound or outbound sharing.
I'm
Yeah, but- okay.
aware of that.
Yeah.
There was a reason.
Okay, that's fine.
And
I just wanted to.
yeah, A, it gets very complex. B, it was a very short turnaround time. Remember, we had the executive committee meeting just a week prior to the time that I actually turned around, put the questions together with the help from different folks and sent it across. And even then, some board members said, this takes too much time. So that was the primary reason. I would rather have responses from more cities at a very high level. And I'm fully aware of what you're talking. So I'm glad you're bringing that up. Okay, let's move on very quickly to the two speakers on this item. And the first speaker is Assistant Sheriff Adam Oberdorfer from the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office, who will provide a brief regional perspective to contribute to the discussion on ALPRs. Sheriff Johnson is unable to join us this evening, so thank you so much, Assistant Sheriff, for coming. Assistant Sheriff Oberdorfer joined the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office in 2005 after several years in private sector public safety. That took me a while to figure out. Private sector public safety. He holds a BS in criminal justice from California Southern University and an MS in law enforcement and public safety leadership from the University of San Diego, and has contributed to statewide training initiatives through California Peace Officer Standards and Training. He currently leads the Enforcement Bureau, focusing on public safety, community partnerships, and evidence-based policing. Assistant Sheriff, please.
Thank you so much, Vice Mayor. If I may just change this just slightly, I'm going to let my colleague go first
Oh, okay.
because she has a good introduction, and I'll follow up with the regional data sharing if you don't mind.
Perfect. Okay, so then let me introduce her as well right now, and then we'll have the two speakers. So we also have the town of Los Gatos here with us tonight, and thank you so much for accepting our invitation to join the discussion tonight. I see City Manager Chris Constantin. He's right there in the audience. Chris, thank you for being here with us this evening. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Jamie Field, Chief of Police for the Los Gatos Montessorino Police Department. Chief Field has served in this role since late 2021, and she's the first woman to lead the agency there. She brings nearly 25 years of law enforcement experience. Currently, she also serves as the second vice president of the California Police Chiefs Association and participates on several statewide committees focused on legislative policy, technology, and emerging public safety issues. She also serves on the Board of Trustees for Good Samaritan Hospital. Chief Field will now share how Los Gatos and Montessorino utilize a combination of city or town-owned and privately owned ALPRs. We're going to get your
For that
presentation.
introduction, really, we're taking a moment just to get the slide deck up there, and really for the next 5 to 7 minutes, there'll be a brief overview of the ALPR, or Automated License Plate Reader Program, and then some of the guardrails that are in place. And then I'll turn it over to my regional partner that was introduced just a few moments ago. So if we can go to the next slide. I want to go into really quick what the Automated License Plate Reader Program allows. And it's been in existence for the last several decades. A lot of us might know this through parking enforcement. When you cross the Golden Gate Bridge, the way that it knows to charge your to charge you for the bridge crossing is through an ALPR system. Parking enforcement is another one. All of our parking enforcement, or at least in the town of Los Gatos, our vehicles have an ALPR system on there to be able to check the times, the records, and know which vehicles have moved or have not moved. Also, I mean, when you drive into the mall, the parking structure at Valley Fair Mall, it checks your license plate. So just a few of the ways that it's been around in existence for quite some time. Now enter into the area of law enforcement. And we see that now in terms of proactive. You saw the organized retail theft and other ways that'll be on a future slide in a moment. But then also from more of a reactive sense, letting us know when somebody that may be involved in a crime enters into the community. So we can really be a force multiplier and get out there, and we like to say a smart deployment. We may not know that there's particular subject of interest that's responsible for burglaries in other areas, residential burglaries. However, it's triggered off of one of the ALPRs, then we can at least flood the area. Whether we identify the location or the suspect sees us and flees the area, at least we've resolved any potential crime in that area. Now, the only ones that can access this information are those that are properly trained, and I'll talk about the training in a few moments. DOJ oversees that training, audits us. We have to take this particular training annually. When I say we, it's everybody within my police department has to take the DOJ CLETS training. Additionally, there's policy. Any ALPR, use of ALPR within a law enforcement agency, we have to have that policy as a standalone by law, and I'll talk about the law in a moment as well, on our website. So if you go to the next slide, I'll talk about some of the use cases specifically for ALPR. It's really considered like a pointer system. As there's an ALPR alert, there's a picture, an image that's taken of that particular vehicle, identifying the license plate, then further follow-up has to occur for us to be able to utilize that information. That information means we have to look into DMV information. Any kind of research into those databases is, again, audited by the Department of Justice. Stolen vehicles, amber alerts. So not just for criminal purposes, it's also to protect our community and to look for canvassing of particular areas where maybe a crime has occurred or maybe potentially about to occur as well. Next slide. So the slide that you see, I'm not very good at standing behind these things. The slide that you see up here on your right, that is actually an image. That's one of our investigative vehicles of an ALPR hit. So when we receive a hit, as we would call it, that's what goes to maybe one of our work cell phones, to the mobile data computer within the vehicles of the officers, or to one of our emails, depending on how that might be set up in an agency. That's the image that would come across. You see the license plate, you see the vehicle, and then it has down at the bottom lower left, the location that ALPR camera is located at. The search requirements in order to search the system, and for us to bring this up, are over there on the other side. And what you'll see, the way at least we have it designed, required for a search is a incident number or a case report number. That is captured within our CAD database, memorialized for forever. We cannot remove that information. It's another ability for us to audit the search functions. So even to do this scenario, we had to create a incident number to document exactly what it was that we were doing. There's many other search criteria that's in there that's captured and retained within the system. Next slide. Now you may have seen at the top of the prior slide that said Senate Bill 34 compliant use. Senate Bill 34 has been in existence since 2015, and it's the automated license plate reader guidance. That's overseen by the Department of Justice. I actually brought the bulletin. You could have maybe enough copies here, so you're welcome to pass them around. I also sent this same thing to Vice Mayor Walia as well. But this is the Department of Justice. This is a guideline update as of 2023. If you'd like to take a look at it. In essence, these different blue blocks is what it says, that there needs to be a custodian of record for each one of the agencies. There needs to be a posted policy, as I mentioned, in an audit process. This information that's obtained, these ELPR systems cannot be sold or shared, or they can only be shared within law enforcement. And in this case, only within California, because we have Senate Bill 54 as well, and Senate Bill 34 They overlay one another and provide the protection surrounding this. Anytime that we as a public entity install an ALPR camera, there has to be a public comment or prior to the implementation, meaning it has to go before the governing body, all of you. The data retention we heard about from the survey. And then there's a lot of sharing rules listed in Senate Bill 54 and 34 as well. And it even pertains to PRAs, because we never want this information to be utilized in a weaponized manner. And what information can sometimes be retained from a PRA can be for many good intentions, but we don't want this information to be reversed and used for bad intentions as well. You see on the other side is just a still image of at least our transparency portal. The vendor that we use is Flock. There are many vendors out there. That's why I'll just refer to it as ALPR. We anticipate more vendors on the horizon. If not for this technology, the efficiency and effectiveness of law enforcement in general would definitely change. There's many stories, as you may hear in a few moments. Behind the platform and the administrative function of most of these ALPR platforms, there's toggles, or at least that's what I'll refer to them as. And that's what you see up there under search features. The highlighted one, access statewide network, that were turned on. Obviously, that would be shared throughout the state. There's many other toggles. I do an hour presentation with different stakeholders to show where our toggles are at. And at least for us, we just share within this county. Next slide. When I talked about that training that's out there that's required annually of us under the Department of Justice, that's the certificate that each employee should receive. It could be the IT manager, it could be an officer, it could be parking enforcement or community service officer. That's actually an image of mine that I took last year. That information can only be accessed by authorized law enforcement and criminal justice personnel. So there's a whole unit at the DA's office if that were to be used in an unauthorized manner. Next slide. And as for the final slide, going over the responsible use, these are just some of the high-level responsible use areas that at least we model within County Los Gatos. We have a 30-day retention, which sounds to be the most common. The process of auditing, the CLETS training that I talked about, the public transparency portal, which you saw an image of, and then making sure that it's used in a protected manner. Moving forward, as you heard, I sit on a number of different committees and in my role through the California Police Chiefs Association, staying close to this particular Senate Bill 1013. Right now, it's referenced as intent language only. Over the next couple of weeks, it will likely be filled in with some more language. It is the only ALPR bill right now that's been introduced. The deadline for bill introduction has already passed and is referred to as the automated license plate recognition systems. So that has been introduced by Senator Sabrina Cervantes out of the Valley area. What we anticipate, because this was a bill that was introduced last year, ended up being vetoed by the governor. And so we'll see where it takes us this year. It does include, or will likely include, the 30-day retention and a lot of the other guardrails. Right now, there is not necessarily guidance on the ALPR functions. Yes, we have this, but clearly, as we have seen in the media, there may be space for more. We hope that this will provide the oversight so that we are all operating in a similar manner. Certainly the survey showed that there's a few different ways that this is being governed, and hopefully through legislation that will provide a state blanket of how to govern these very valuable systems. Thank you.
Thank you so much for trying to keep this very concise. There's a lot of information. Again, we are the ones with the limited time here, putting you in this awkward position. So with that, you're going to have Assistant Sheriff. We'll have 15 minutes after this for questions, and we'll make a list of resources to be shared so that Shali can send everything together to each one of us so that we don't get 10 emails from Assistant Sheriff.
Good evening, and thank you for inviting me. And I apologize for the confusion. When the chief and I compared our notes, we were basically providing the same presentation. So it made sense to do one and then just kind of supplement that. So I wanted to talk about a little bit of the use cases. It hit me as you were presenting the survey that it talked about ALPR being introduced around 2020. The reality is ALPR has been in policing since probably the early 2000s. But in those times, it was really in a mobile vehicle. meaning that we had patrol cars with ALPR cameras that were driving around, right? I had one when I was out in patrol in 2006, 2007. And the way that they work, to the chief's point, is that they run through different types of hot lists, including stolen vehicles, or if a partner agency places that vehicle onto a hot list, then that can trigger an alert. But there's other types of alerts too, right? As the chief pointed out, missing persons, other types of interest lists, right? But those are law enforcement sensitive lists. The other side of how ALPR is used frequently, particularly in your communities, is for investigative purposes. And the way I like to look at it is I see ALPR as an opportunity to give victims a voice. If you have a resident who lives in a rural area of the county or in any one of your communities and they go out of town, or they go to work and a burglary occurs at their house, when we go there to take that call, unless if they have really sophisticated camera systems, it's very hard unless if you get fingerprints or there's some other type of eyewitness to make an arrest in those cases. Usually how we solve them historically is through things like somebody calls and says, hey, there's a bicycle being stolen at the flea market for way less than, we go there and we investigate it and we realize this is the bike that was stolen at that burglary, and we start asking questions and eventually we link it together. But with ALPR, let's say that as the deputy or the officer is handling that burglary, somebody says, hey, there was a red van parked down the street. I've never seen that red van before. Without ALPR, we have no leads. But with ALPR, I can go in, as the chief showed in that search, I can put in the case number for that burglary, and I can say, I'm looking for a red van, and this is the time frame. And then it's going to search through those red vans, and it's going to come back with different pictures, not of the person who's driving it, but of the vehicle, of the back of the vehicle with their license plate. Now what I can do is I can, using the same technology, I can see where else that van may be now, where does it normally reside, assuming that van has been seen in ALPR networks. But I can also show that photo on my phone to the neighbor and say, hey, is that the vehicle that you saw? And they may say no, right? And maybe I start my search again. But the likelihood of finding a suspect in a scenario like that goes way up with technology such as ALPR. For our office, and I'm sure every police agency in the county has cases that they've solved with ALPR. A few of the ones that come to mind for me that I think are highlights is we had one in Saratoga, in the city of Saratoga, where it was a stolen vehicle. It came across as a hit. Much like the chief showed, we had an alert on an MDT. In our case, our dispatch gets an alert as well, and they actually create a CAD detail and they dispatch it to us. In this case, we responded, we located that vehicle, we stopped the vehicle, the person actually pulled over, and oftentimes they turn into pursuits or other types of incidents, but in this case, they did pull over. And this individual, he was off to do something. He had multiple assault rifles, multiple weapons. He literally exited the wrong exit into Saratoga. But we don't know where he was ultimately going. We don't know what his ultimate mission was that night. What we do know is we arrested an individual for multiple felonies that evening with assault weapons. Right? And without ALPR, we probably would have never gotten that alert. One of the things that it tells me as somebody who's been in law enforcement for over 20 years is a lot of people who are doing crimes, who are committing crimes, even terrorist acts, steal cars before they commit those crimes. And that is how ALPR can be really helpful in protecting our communities. One of the other common case studies and realities is kind of what I told about the 4-5 or the burglary with the van. So we've had multiple cases, including a homicide, where we had an eyewitness say, hey, the vehicle was a black Honda and it started with a B and a 2, but I don't remember anything else. And based off of that, we were able to confirm that that was true. And we've located that vehicle. In other cases, we had people who said, it was absolutely not me. I was not the one who committed that crime. When we believe it was for other investigative reasons. And using ALPR, we were able to confirm that, no, your car drove to the house at the time of the crime. Like that is factual. We can show the course of your driving through different ALPR cameras. Those are a few of the high level use cases. But the other reality in policing today is the fact that crimes are not just staying in one community. They're moving between our communities. It's not uncommon for us to, stop somebody who has warrants out of Oakland, Richmond, San Francisco, and oh, by the way, San Diego, right? Because they're going all over the place committing burglaries or committing crimes, because they know the quicker they get out of the community that they committed the crime, the quicker or the less chance that we have of catching them. ALPR is really the first piece of technology, with the exception of some of the other data sharing initiatives that we've tried as policing, to piece that all together. And then lastly, I think the scenario that to me is the one that kind of hits home, particularly as a dad and as a cop who's been to these calls, are those calls that none of us want to respond to, whether it be a kidnapping, a sexual assault. Right? San Jose had a sexual assault that was all over the news that was solved with ALPR, right? Where, my understanding from the news article was the victim generally knew the description of the vehicle, just like I said, and San Jose PD was able to use ALPR to identify that. But similarly, we've had incidents up and down the state where ALPR has been used in those types of cases, right? Somebody takes a young child and we get a rough vehicle description. That changes the outcome of that case very, very quickly if we can get that license plate investigated and then ultimately use the systems that we have in our state, right? As the chief said, I think one of the things that California has done well up to this point, not perfectly, there's still some room for legislation, is at least provided a baseline for ALPR policy and regulations. And as you saw with those surveys, although there's some minor tweaks, we all have policies because we're required to by law. In the county, we also have a surveillance ordinance. We have to go in front of our board and get our policy approved. Right? Many of you have probably approved or reviewed the policies for your police departments. We're required under that law to make those policies public and be transparent about what we're doing with ALPR. And then I think the chief said it very eloquently, and I was going to say it as well, but ALPR is being used more in other sectors than law enforcement, right? And the reality is that from a privacy perspective, every time you go to the mall, every time you get on or off the freeway and go through a toll bridge, that is ALPR technology, right? The convenience of not having to have one of those tags anymore when you go into a parking lot, that is ALPR. The difference is that those private industries have no regulations on what they do with the data. And they can sell it to Reuters or whoever that they want to sell it to. In California, our law enforcement agencies are restricted from selling it. We're restricted from sharing it to anybody other than a law enforcement agency in California, right? Because the regulations and the law says we can't share it to our federal partners unless it is part of a criminal investigations, and we certainly can't share it for immigration or other purposes. Thank you again for inviting me, and I look forward to the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Assistant Sheriff. Okay, we'll take 15. We'll take maximum 15 minutes of QA for both of them, Chief Field and the Assistant Sheriff. I saw a hand here. Go ahead.
So I don't know which of you to direct this to, but perhaps you can both chime in. You mentioned that there are parameters imposed or policies imposed, and you cannot share this with any agencies outside of California. Do you see where that poses a problem in terms of, let's just talk about, somebody in a bordering city to Nevada or something like that, and they take a child and then they leave, and now they're in Nevada or Oregon or whatever, and you can't share that with the other state.
Yeah, so the law,
or vice versa.
100%. The way the law is written is that we can't proactively, meaning in real time, share the data. Right? Let's say, for example, you were a border city and a kidnapping occurred. If the agency on the other side had a legitimate criminal investigative reason for that information, you could provide them the criminal information, but not access to your ALPR system.
Oh, okay.
So there's a way to do that for criminal investigations. But what that means is that an agency across the border can't be in your ALPR system and querying your searches and looking at your cameras.
Thank you.
Thank you. Another question?
I don't have a question, but I have a lot of information that I'm happy to share because with all modesty, I think I'm somewhat of an expert on this subject. And I just want to let you know that whenever is the right time, I'm happy to do
Yeah,
it.
so QA, then I'll take public comment, then we'll see how we're doing time. I do want to keep that, and this is a test case study session. So I am okay taking a longer meeting, but it'll be on each of you. Linda, your question.
I saw a video recently where there was this 20 robbers in a jewelry store and they were hammering and they had multiple cars and then they drove in all different directions. And so the police could only follow one car. And then they went to another city and then they got rental cars. So is the public safety able to, they're being more sophisticated. How does the public safety react to all those things?
So yes, that's an ongoing challenge for us. But at least if we can get the license plate information from the initial cars, then we can capture that. If we know the direction of travel that they are going, we can find that out. And there's a lot of work that we can do with those rental car companies. That's not uncommon. So this is one piece of technology, but what you see, and I'm sure many of you have seen with different agencies that perhaps you've worked with, is the layering of different technology. The ALPR function is one of the first layers, and it's probably one of the first tools of a robust technology area. But there's a lot of other layering that goes with it. And there's a lot of the checks and balances along the way as well. All of that has to be documented either in the CAD information that I mentioned or in the case report along with it. So yes, in terms of organized retail theft, this is extremely helpful to see what is being used, where it's being used, or when it is not being used as well. We also see that some of these license plates are being what we would call gold plated, meaning if they are they're an actively pursued vehicle because it's stolen or maybe used in one of these particular type of crimes, they're putting a false license plate on it. And so then that allows us to try and figure out additional information. So sometimes we get investigative leads from this as well, especially if the front license plate doesn't match the back license plate.
Thank you. Question from Liang and then Sally. Liang first.
Right.
So timer is running for all of us for questions.
Latino, I guess maybe Saratoga also, because we contract with the county police, and recently the county board of supervisors decided somehow to stop the ALPR, so we were forced to stop our ALPR. But since 10 other cities are still using that, what does that mean? Then would we become a city where everyone runs to because we don't have LPR? So how can the city still install our ALPR so that at least the data is connected with all these other ALPR systems?
So it's a challenge, and although the sheriff's office respects the decision of the board, like I mentioned earlier, we have a surveillance ordinance. So what the board did with our ordinance is they approved it. They said we can continue to use ALPR, but they explicitly blocked Flock from being a vendor that the sheriff's office can work with. So we're currently working with the cities to hopefully find another vendor. And that conversation is ongoing. There are other vendors out there. But from a technology perspective, we support ALPR 100%, and we're excited to get it.
Block is blocked. If we come up with another vendor, it will still be open. Okay, thank you. That's good information. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Sally.
Thank you. Mine's actually around a similar issue, which is as some jurisdictions are stopping their contracts with Flock, at what point for those jurisdictions who don't, do we lose so much value because we're not getting sharing amongst all the jurisdictions in the county? And I know you can't say, oh, when you lose 5 out of,
Right.
whatever, but what's your impression on when do we lose critical mass?
I think that's still to be determined. I mean, clearly the value in the ALPR model that's currently presented is the data sharing. And it's really up to the individual governing body or to the agency, however your model is, to determine how far that is shared. Is it a statewide sharing? Is it several counties, or is it only within the county? All of that can be customized and is on the transparency portals. So yes, are there potential limitations moving forward? I think that's still to be seen. Or is there going to be technology that comes out that augments that? I think it's too early right now. I'm, just like my partner said, there's going to be a lot of other vendors that are going to come onto the market, especially in light of some of the current challenges. So it's more of a monitoring and evaluating period.
Questions from the ones who have not yet asked? Maria?
Yeah, so a question related to that. Given that, for example, Saratoga has flock cameras, but they can't be used right now, is that still a tool available to the sheriff? For example, if there were a robbery, an incident in downtown Saratoga, somebody flees on Highway 9, heads into Monte Sereno and then Los Gatos, do you have the ability to query our flock cameras with an investigation number? So only jurisdictions with flock cameras can investigate or ask for that information?
So there's several aspects here, and I'll address both your questions briefly because I think they're interconnected. So one of the things that each vendor, and I think law enforcement has been asking for this for many years, is we want vendors to be able to work with each other so that if one city has one vendor, another city has another, we're not having to pay high expenses for interfaces. Right. And there's a general frustration in the community. Flock blocked a lot of their API access maybe it was a year ago. There's other vendors out there who have more open networks. And to the chief's point, I think within the next few months, you're going to see a major change in how those vendors work together because of some of the things that are going on in the media. And they're going to be forced to work better together because, Flock specifically has a really good marketing point in the fact that it's very inexpensive to network those cameras because it's cheap, it's free, it's part of their basic structure, right? That's a relatively new approach to this. For the most part, law enforcement historically has had to pay for interfaces or regional hubs or other ways of sharing that data. And I think, as we see this unravel here a little bit more, particularly in our county where we have, several cities looking at different vendors and different options, that there's some opportunities to still have that data shared, to be able to have that regional connection, but potentially be using different vendors.
Okay. Question.
So you've lost access to Flock in the county, in the sheriff's for the 3 cities, and I don't know if there were any in the unincorporated areas, but you still have vehicle mounted ALPRs, right? I thought the sheriff had ALPRs mounted in the vehicles.
All right, well, sir.
Was that the case at some point?
Yes, many years ago.
Okay, and is that the case with the police department?
We have ALPR in the vehicles through a different vendor.
Okay.
Other questions? Anyone who has not yet asked a question? Okay. These 2, and then that's the end of our time for
So
questions.
my
Kelly.
question was just whether or not the vendors interact together, and it sounds like they don't. But they hopefully will. Yeah, that's
Okay.
problematic.
They have the very limited interaction, but not to the scale that from an investigative perspective we would want.
Yes,
Some
your question.
vendors do operate a little bit more fluidly than others. Flock and Axon, the 2 big vendors right now in the market, they do not interface with their systems or information.
So what system does Los Gatos use? ALPR
In
system,
our vehicles, we use Axon.
Axon.
Parking enforcement, we use a different one called Tannery Creek. And
Okay.
then for the standalone ones on that we've been talking about here tonight and that we saw, that's through flock.
Oh, complicated. So my question is really about, say a crime happened in Saratoga or Cupertino where we don't have any camera. However, we do have county police. Or would the county police, or even if a crime in Los Gatos, maybe Palo Alto use a different system. Would county police or any other city police have access to other flock, other ALPR vendors, even if they are not contracted directly with the city? Or they can only access data for the ones that they have contract with the city?
And on the relationship and what each agency wants to share, right? So Los Gatos, you share within the county, right? So the sheriff's office has access to Los Gatos's cameras, right?
So it's say Sunnyvale, if they have an agreement with the county, someone who committed a crime in Cupertino runs to Sunnyvale. If we have a partial license plate, maybe you can track that data on Sunnyvale.
possible.
So it's better, it's for all of the cities, whichever vendor we use, we allow access to the county and the other cities, then we can our own sharing.
From a crime perspective, absolutely. From a,
So
there's always those privacy concerns, right? Each community should have its desire to be able to set up its sharing however they want.
Does
But yeah.
the Los Gatos police have to have a specific contract with Milpitas police? So Milpitas have access to that data, not just county.
No, no. So ours is to share within the county, and then we have a much larger network that may share with us. And they can choose whether or not to share with us. So some areas may not share with us. We designate who we share with as well. So it's really on the individual. So for instance, another city may share even larger, or another city may only share with one direct. For instance, when we initiated ours in Los Gatos, we didn't share with anybody. We just kept it within Los Gatos. So we did a very slow implementation period, and we kept it that way for almost 2 years. And then we went back to our council and asked to share within the county.
Okay,
So
thank you. I'm going to ask a quick question. We're running out of time. So Saratoga is the one that cannot access. But if you need to, can you access Los Gatos or another if they are willing to offer, or you cannot? Thank you, Maria, for asking that question earlier.
Yes, if Los Gatos is willing to share with all law enforcement agencies in the county, then our office has the ability to access that camera.
Okay. And that relationship will vary depending on the city's protocols, and the policy has to be decided by individual cities. The city council decides it at each city level, Liang. I just wanted to make sure you get that. So great answer earlier that from a law enforcement perspective, that's what you're answering. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to save the 1 minute and switch to public comment. Please stay here. We may get more questions. Ultimately, I'm going to have to move on from the study session item. So there's a time cap, 90 seconds each for the speakers. Can you get the time started? And is there anyone in the room who wants to speak? Can you please make your comment? You can speak from there, 90 seconds.
I don't need to go to the podium.
No, you don't need to.
Should I reset?
Well, I don't want everybody to have to turn around. So if you don't mind, I'll just go to the podium.
Come on over. You got 90 seconds running
I
there.
don't want you guys to hurt your necks, right?
Thank you.
Is that already my timer?
Yes.
Okay, well, I asked my children before I came here, when I kissed them goodnight and let my husband take their bedtime, what do you not like about these cameras? They say, I don't want to be spied on, Mom. I don't want to have cameras seeing where we go in our car. This is the thing. I really don't care what few crimes are actually solved. Our right to privacy in public spaces and our right to freedom of movement without being mass surveilled is far more important and priceless. I don't care how cheap it is. I don't care how expensive it is for a city or county to do this. It is not okay to have warrantless searches. Guardrails in Mountain View failed.
That police department gave a wonderful list of all the things that they were going to do to make sure it was okay. 30 days, only them, etc. It still failed. That is why they voted to cancel the contract. It doesn't matter what ALPR system you use. If they're starting to use AI, if they're starting to be posted in all these vulnerable places, surveying us all, it's not okay, and they need to be discontinued.
Thank you for your comment. Next speaker, please. Start 90 seconds.
I just wanted to bring up, like, even with guardrails, this is still a pretty abusable system. Like, there's cases of like individual officers sharing information across the country. Just because there's rules against it doesn't mean people won't do it. Personally, I'm a bit worried about how excited people are to pick up, just implement the new shiny piece of technology just because it makes life a little easier. Like, I don't know. In the past, I always thought policing was about, building trust and working with the community, and I don't know how one could still claim to do that while subjecting the public to mass surveillance. Like, it doesn't matter how you sanitize it or what kind of rules you put in place. That's the nature of it. At the very least, just keep following the example of other cities.
Thank you so much. Anyone else in the room? Just as a reminder, as I said earlier, total 10 minutes of public time. Anyone online? At the end of 10 minutes, we've already had 3 minutes. So 7 minutes max left. So the next speaker online, we will get started. Each one gets a maximum of 90 seconds. But at the end of total public comment of 10 minutes, we will move forward in this study session. Kelly, can
Okay.
you?
Yes, we'll start with Austin M.
Okay.
All right, hopefully you can hear me. I assume you can. I'm so glad Chief Field brought up training. This is an issue that has been of particular interest to me because these systems are being abused nationwide and including here in the Bay. To this date, she and her department have yet to disclose what training her staff receives. By policy, the town is required to develop training. By that same policy, training records are required to be maintained by the training officer, and yet when you request that data, the town says there are no responsive records. When confronted with this detail, the chief brought up the DOJ audits. Well, I requested that audit too. And there's no mention of flock or ALPRs. While I appreciate the Los Gatos Montesino Police Department is CLET certified, that's the bare minimum, has nothing to do with flock, ALPRs, or the town's ALPR policy. Hopefully Chief Field can explain why that is and demonstrate that she and her staff are in fact trained on this and that the town is following its own policy. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. The next speaker, please, Charlie.
Sure. Next speaker is Gerardo Leon.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say a few things. I want to first start off by saying that this is not like paying for a toll or for parking. That is, paying for like a service or whatever. This is just mass surveillance. Also on the point of being properly trained, flock cameras have been accessed by members of the public who are not trained, who are not supposed to have access to that. They were like easily hacked into, such that anybody could, go to a website and access the cameras. And that poses a very clear security threat. The same, uh, all quote unquote good intentions aside, whether or not you want to, stop crime or you want to say that this is not going to be used to violate people's individual rights. as we saw in Mountain View, that was not the case. The supposed guardrails that were set up failed, and outside agencies were able to access that. Across the country, this type of technology has been used to target protesters and people who are trying to access reproductive rights. Going back to that point about sharing with outside agencies in other states and whatnot, that's where it becomes particularly dangerous. I don't believe that we can't solve crime without these things. I ask you to follow the actions of Mountain View and
That's
others.
time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
The next speaker is Tim McKenzie.
Yes, please. Go
Greetings.
ahead.
Hi, I'm Tim McKenzie. I use he, him pronouns. I am from Mountain View. I just want to echo what has been said by some of the previous commenters. ALPRs do not contribute to public safety. They actually threaten public safety. We have repeated multiple examples of faulty AI-powered ALPRs giving false positives, leading police to hold innocent people at gunpoint, sending police dogs to maul black men, handcuffing 12-year-old boys from New Mexico. Those are three real examples that have already happened with the ALPRs. They have a 90%, according to Business Insider, just had an article a couple days ago. They have a 90% identification rate, which means 1 in 10 license plates that are identified are mistakenly identified. That is not acceptable. Furthermore, Mountain View, the MVPD shared that there were about 25,000 searches of ALPR data from August 2024 to December 2025, and 3 million searches from outside agencies, meaning most of the searches are not to stopping local crime, but are done externally.
That's time.
Thank you so much for your comment. Next speaker, please.
I just got it in at the end. Your last moment.
The next speaker is David.
Yes, hello. My name is David. I wanted to give a little more information about the downsides of these technologies. Over the last years, and particularly since last year, flock cameras have been used by immigration agents to snatch immigrants up off the street. In some cases, these agencies are using their own cameras here in California, and in other cases, they use credentials borrowed from friendly nearby California agencies. This renders as moot any protections provided by the only within California sharing restrictions. We have seen in data audit that certain federal-friendly California agencies frequently perform searches in violation of state law with audit reasons like CBP or immigration. This makes any agencies that have opted into state-level sharing complicit in violations of California law. Another common use is for agencies in state with strict reproductive rights laws to track women getting abortions across the country. Finally, and probably the most common nefarious use, is just stalking. Every week, there's another story about someone with access tracking the movements of their partners. In addition to these uses, Flock themselves make it very hard for agencies to keep up with changes in sharing settings, making overbroad sharing basically a certainty. They do this because they make more money when there's more sharing, because their product is more comprehensive. This is what led to the exposure of Mountain View data and caused their cancellation. ALPR supporters will say that these are isolated incidents, that it's a vendor problem.
Thank you so much, David, for your comment. And I believe that's the end of all the people who have requested to speak. So I close public comment and bring this back to the board as we continue. It's 8:30. We had started at 7:37, 60 minutes total for this item. Let's extend that a little bit. Let's take 15 minutes. I can sit longer, but I don't want to put the board through that. There are a couple of things we do need to do tonight. So show of hands, 15 minutes good, or do we need more?
We might need more.
15 good? Okay, let's do 15 minutes. Comments. I will give you more time, Rajiv. Let's quickly take comments. Rajiv wants to share something with us. He needs more time. So let's take other quick comments and then give him some time. 8:45, we will move on to the next item.
Then I set a time.
Yeah, total 8:45.
Okay.
Yeah. Any comments?
So just for clarity, are we doing action on this or are we just talking about it?
We cannot take an action, right?
Right.
It's a study session.
I just didn't think we could, but I just wanted to make sure.
Thank
so.
you. Great question. Great question. I saw another hand somewhere there. Maria? Yeah.
I'd say, in Los Gatos, it was rolled out very slowly, as Chief Field pointed out that when Flock was first, or ALPR through Flock was introduced in Los Gatos, the sharing was only within the city. It was not shared outside. And the council has set very strict guardrails. I know our police department routinely checks the backside to make sure that when there's a software update or something, Flock doesn't reset the toggles to make sure that our sharing is only where it should be. I have a fellow council member who constantly points out that Flock is kind of or license plate readers are the antithesis of profiling. We're just looking at a vehicle and a license plate for a match. Police are not driving around saying that vehicle doesn't look like it belongs here. That driver doesn't look like they live in Los Gatos. It's just straight data. And I think our chief can speak to this, but for years, all I've heard from community members is, my house was broken into, where were the police? Or, why is crime happening here? You can't have a police officer in front of every house. And this is a force amplifier. It allows a small municipality with a limited police department to have another tool. Does it mean it can't be abused? No, all technology can be abused. And at least for our community, it works well because we have guardrails. Our police department gives us regular updates. We have a transparency portal. And about what percentage of crimes in the last few years were solved with Flock?
I don't have a percentage, but we have usually about probably weekly success cases. At the same time, we can't say how many cases that Flock has prevented either. It's really important that the measurement tool that's used with this isn't just what was solved, but also we can't show it prevented, because when we go into an area where there might be an alert, we may never see that individual, but the individual come into the area time and time again, and we flood that area. At least it pushes them outside the area, and that community of bad actors starts to learn that, we don't want to go to whatever that community was. Every time we go there, there's a flood of law enforcement that's there. So it's really important, even if the CASCC policies are different, likely from community to community. So we're relatively a non-CASCC community. Even if they flee from us, at least we know that they are not doing whatever they can do with our community.
Thank you so much. A quick comment from Sally. Anyone here? Because I do want to give Rajiv, he has been waiting very patiently. And at the end, give me 1 minute. I need to wrap this item up.
So so the understanding the data, and I don't claim to be an expert on how one analyzes ALPR data, but clearly the media doesn't. And I think clearly maybe even some of our departments, whether, it's just very complicated. Let me give you an example from Los Altos. So our chief ran an historical audit for May 2023. It is important to note that in May 2023, that was a year before we installed any cameras. But despite that, no cameras, the audit for May 2023 reflected thousands of searches and listed numerous agencies throughout the country having access to cameras we didn't even have. So I don't think the analysis around the data is accurate. It cannot be. And so somebody who understands this stuff has to help us really understand what's going on.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And sorry, I'm switching over to first names. It's just faster. Managing a study session makes me think of that. Other comments? Liang, very quick comment. And after this is Rajiv. Very quick comment. You've asked enough questions and comments there.
Does the photo ever show any person?
No more questions. This is
no
only
questions.
comments. We are done with questions. Back to Rajiv.
Can I go to the podium?
Please go ahead if you want to.
What I'm going to tell you is not trying to advocate for any one position. It's just my experience. For context, I was the one who championed the LPR deployment in Los Altos Hills. I believe we were one of the first, if not the first town to do that. We were certainly the first town that was monitored by the sheriff. We deployed our LPRs in early 2021. We put 40 of them in town. We covered every single entrance to town. You could not get into Los Altos Hills without passing camp. Our burglary rate that year in 2021 was 22 burglaries that year. Over the next 2 years, with the cameras in place, our burglary rate tripled. This is just data. Okay. Since 2021, LPRs have solved 2 burglaries in our town, out of probably over 100, and have resulted in 7 arrests. In terms of costs, I want to share with you that what we heard from the sheriff is that we were spending about $100,000 a year on cameras, and the cost from the sheriff that they attributed to accessing and monitoring the cameras was twice that. Just did. You should know that Flock has holes. Flock does not detect or does not notify the sheriff if there is a freshly stolen license plate that's not yet in the stolen vehicle database. They can still go back and search for that, but in terms of notification, somebody steals a license plate, they stick it on their car and drives into town right away. Not in the database, not going to flag anything. Not only that, you don't need to go steal a fresh license plate to avoid being detected by Flock. You can just take your license plate off or cover it, and Flock can't do anything with the license plate at that point. Just information to be aware of. These are limitations. When we talked to the sheriff and talked to Flock about detecting mismatched license plate that should have been on a Chevy that's now on a Toyota, they said, sorry, we don't do that. No police department ever asked us for that. When we asked our sheriff representative about that, they said, well, people change license plates from one of their vehicles to another vehicle all the time, so we don't really worry about mismatched license plate, which made my eyes pop. Okay. They also don't follow up. They don't treat a missing license plate the same way as a stolen license plate, because they consider that to be an infraction. This is not a comment about Flock. This is a comment about how the sheriff uses Flock. Another thing to be aware of is we had a lot of burglaries due to Chilean gangs flying into town, renting a legal vehicle from Avis or Hertz or wherever, and doing the burglary, giving the vehicle back and flying back out. You just need to be aware that those cases will not be held by Flock. In fact, this is very difficult to solve anyway because the guys out of the country. It's still very useful in many cases, as you heard from the sheriff. They do catch a lot of people. It's just that you're going to be aware that there's holes in the system. And as that information gets out into the community, that there are these holes, you can expect that there'll be a trend in the direction of exploiting those holes. Also note that front license plates are not captured. So if you have a mismatch between your front and rear license plate, Flock is not going to tell you about that. They just look at the rear license plate. In my experience, some of the deputies that we worked with were not aware of how Flock worked. There was a case where a burglary had occurred. There was an LPR on that street. The burglar had to pass that because it was a dead-end street. And when the sheriff deputy was asked, can't you get the license plate from the LPR? He said, well, crooks know to fake out the cameras by flashing their headlights at the camera, which didn't make any sense because the LPR looks at the rear license plate. But there's a little bit of education sometimes that needs to be kind of addressed. Let's talk a little bit about privacy. For the Supreme Court, there is no expectation of privacy on a public street. And if you're really concerned about privacy, get rid of your phone, because that's tracking you much more than your license display is, okay? And also private ALPRs, as you've heard, when some people's that people have in their homes, like Saratoga or elsewhere, or in other places, bridges, parking structures, whatnot, they're not subject to all of these rules, okay? One thing we should all be clear-eyed about. This information can be accessed. You all get notifications every few months about a data breach. This information can be breached. If you think that this is secure somehow because of a password, multi-factor authentication, all that, forget it. There are state actors, there's the NSA, all of these guys can get into the data if they want to. So it's just something to be aware of. And finally, you should be aware that even though this data belongs to the town or the sheriff or whatever, I've contacted Flock about this. They have a copy of the data. And the reason they keep a copy of the data is because they need that data to AI train their systems. So all the data that's collected by Flock, just like all the data that's collected from your Tesla, is kept by the vendor and used by the vendor. And so you should just be aware that that's going on. So again, I'm not advocating or not advocating, just providing you with information that I hope will be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Bateja. With that, let's move forward. And I can wrap it up in less than that. Firstly, I want to thank each one of you for giving the high-level information in the brief survey. That helps us all get some kind of information as each of the city at the city council level is dealing with this situation, which is continuing to evolve. What is great to see today is great collaboration in the different law enforcement teams. Two teams came today and they helped us see how they work well together. Thank you so much for being here, giving us factual information from your different perspectives and answering so many questions. Very helpful to us. This is our first study session. So I'm going to get great feedback from my board members here after this. Just to repeat again, Kelly, you asked the question, each council is going to be discussing this and different cities are at different stages. There is a list of resources that we can send to you. If there's anything else, let us know and I can get Jani's clearance now. The survey results, we know they are not perfect. The survey was not even meant to be perfect. I'm fully aware of that. And the second one is the SB 34 document that Chief Field, she has some copies here. In fact, Vicky, can you just grab one and pass them on? Thank you. We can send the soft copy of that, her presentation on the ALPR. And in addition, I can request Shali to add the link to the YouTube video. Maybe in a day or so, she can put all of these together so that there is one email, resource-wise, as each city deals with it. If there's anything else you want to add to that, I think I said 4 things. Let us wrap that up so that we make sure. Anything else? None? Okay, we are ahead of time. No, we are perfectly on time. 8:45 p.m. Just 15 minutes behind my original plan. With that, thank you so much. And thank you, board, for study session done. One study session done. We'll move on to the draft proposed Cities Association fiscal year 2026-27 budget. And we have the executive director, Shali Sirke, and the board treasurer, Rosemary Kamai. The presentation is from Shali. Shali, go ahead.
All right, thank you. So you all probably would have read the agenda report. Tonight is the first read of the proposed budget. I do have several questions that I'm asking direction on, or one question. At our April meeting is when you'll actually vote on the budget. A copy of this budget was provided to the city managers. So as you see, I'm proposing that membership dues stay flat. And I'll just keep going through all of this. I did discuss a little bit about summer membership event, winter event. The numbers have changed there based on data that we have from the last several years of holding these events. As far as expenses go, I can walk you through those. So my contract is coming before you before the end of the fiscal year. And I will be asking for a slight increase in my per hourly. So it doesn't change the total number, which is 130,000. The 130,000 was a very generous cushion in case I needed to work extra hours. So even if you increase my per hourly to 105, I still come under that 130,000. I still have 38 extra hours of work should we need it. I increased legal services by 10%. This is just kind of a blanket 10%. You'll see that throughout, just to kind of a placeholder. Okay. I'm just going to explain the stuff that's more or less noteworthy. Website maintenance, for example, 7,500. This is typical what we've been budgeting every year. Last year we had to roll over the 7,500 from the previous year, but we won't be having to do that this year. Let's see. Okay, I increased the line item for miscellaneous. This is just paper, copy paper, stamps, etc. It gets kind of expensive to make copies of some of our very large packets. We increased the line item for conferences and education for the executive director, which is me, for any additional training. And also when I go to events and I'm representing the cities association, if there's a ticket fee, it would come out of this bucket. Okay, so the line item for meeting space rental, is that up there? Okay, that's kind of more or less a placeholder. We don't have a figure yet from Sunnyvale. So once they do, I can update the budget. And if it's grossly more expensive than that, of course, we'll come back to the board and ask for an adjustment. Special Districts Association and our insurance through SDRMA, usually in about April is when they give me the actual figures or a very close estimate. So for now, I just increased it by 10%. Under hospitality and special events, you see there's a new line item for awards, entertainment, and miscellaneous event expenses. Usually at the winter event, we give recognition certificates to retiring or terming out council members, awards for our champions of the year. Previously, all of that was taken out of the one line item that said winter event. And it wasn't really quite accurate. And so we decided to pull it out and make it its own separate line item this year. That also covers the entertainment that we have at our winter events. The speaker honorarium, we decided to add that. That's new, of course. That just kind of pretty much pays for maybe a plane ticket and maybe a night hotel. If we want to have special guest speakers and they will charge us either for our LAC meetings or for these meetings, especially because you're all doing study sessions. And if you wanted to invite subject matter experts for that, for example, we wanted to have a line item that covered that. The last thing that's new is equipment. This laptop is getting a little old, and so I don't know if I'll need to replace it or how much it'll cost to just kind of, I don't know, refurbish it. And so if you subtract revenue minus expenses of what the proposed budget is, you have an excess of almost $33,000. And so this is where I would like direction from the board. How do you want to handle the $33,000? Do you want to increase the budget for specific line items? Do you want to include brand new line items like funding for county or region-wide programs? Or would you like to reduce the membership dues by some appropriate percentage? And I did a very quick calculation. If we were to reduce membership dues by 5% across the board, That's a savings of $14,000. So 33 minus 14. If we were to reduce membership dues by 10%, that's a savings of $28,000. That gets us closer to zero. The idea is, you're paying your membership dues in this year, so we would like you to benefit from it in this year. Yeah, so now I'm going to open it up for discussion.
Okay, thank you. So just one quick comment. Yeah. Rosemary, I was just going to refer back to the executive committee discussion that we had. Do you want to add something?
No, I think that, it's modest increases. And I think we did those different breakout categories to more closely reflect what's actually being spent. So I think, I think, just to clarify a little bit more, that's all.
I'm so glad you're there, working closely with Charlie on this, putting this together, really. And we had a robust discussion at the executive committee. That is where some of these ideas came forward. And this year, we are really trying to reduce the number of budget adjustments that we may need so that we can more closely reflect, as Shally pointed out, and as Rosemary said, what the actual expenses are. We're not trying to increase expenses. We're just trying to be truer to what we predict it could happen. Let's start with a few questions and then we'll come back to discussion. Questions, Mark? And then
Is there any thought of putting the 32,779 in reserves?
That's another option.
Yeah, great idea. Let me quickly add one thing that I forgot. At the executive committee discussion, the suggestion was we should keep, and I can go into more detail, I didn't want to be the first one to speak, to keep that overage between 20 to 30K. And I can talk about that later.
Try to keep the what?
The overage, not to plan the budget, because there are some things that haven't been sorted out yet.
Right.
And at the executive committee, we were wondering, do we want to keep so that at the end of the year, even if we go over on some of these things, we are still within the budget. Do we want to keep it between 10 to 20,000 or 20 to 30,000? I can mention a few things that may and why are the reasons. I want to be fully transparent with the board. And tonight is a draft proposal. It is not final for approval tonight. That will come back in April. Try to bring it here 3 times. Last month, we introduced it. Today, we are discussing the draft. And in April, we will approve it. So I want to hold my comments at this point.
It's similar. There's nothing wrong with a surplus put in reserves for whatever use is needed. Do we currently have a reserve?
Yes.
Yes, we have a LAIP account, and that's the next agenda item. I just want to explain, but yes, we do.
Yes. I saw a hand there.
Yes, I just wanted to mention that this is an opportunity to get feedback from you tonight, to be able to make any kind of like changes, adjustments, what have you, so that when it comes back in April, is it Shally? April, right?
April 9th.
Then it will be a little bit more finalized. You will have seen it. We will incorporate any of comments and be able to bring it back.
Okay, so I'm hearing questions and comments together. Great idea. In the interest of time, I allocated only 20 minutes because we have a busy night.
Was there any discussion at executive committee to not charge for the December holiday party? Rather than an across the board reduction to the membership fee? So in other words, we wouldn't have to pay, I think last year it was $75 per person, and perhaps not charging.
We didn't consider that, Rosemary.
Yeah, we didn't consider that, but we did consider, if you look at the line item up at the top under revenue for the summer event, it was recommended that we not charge for the summer event. Because I know that historically, some years you charge and some years you didn't charge. And we thought, okay, this year, let's figure out not charging for the summer event. I mean, yes, for the summer event, and then leaving the winter event as is. And I guess it's, we can also adjust, because the other item that's a little bit different is Shally and I will be looking at potential sponsorships, right? And that had not been done previous, well, it was done last year, but previously it had not been done. And if it gets covered, then that's something that we could also, adjust.
And may I add that one of the limits is we're trying to minimize the gifts reporting requirement.
Mm.
So if we, and Janny will correct me if I'm wrong, but if the cities association pays more than $50 per person for our members, does that trigger?
No.
No,
City
that's
Association doesn't
No.
trigger, but if a sponsor contributes more than $50 per member.
which is about $3,600 per sponsor.
So I would advocate to keep it as is and possibly consider, I don't even know what some of the winter things are, I'm new, but having that kind of be considered part of the dues that the cities pay. I would rather not see a fluctuation of dues that cities pay. You know, if it's reduced this year and then it's brought back up next year, we have to kind of, there might be questions around that when we're budgeting within our cities and things like that. I'd rather see that just kind of maintain. If in fact, after several years, if we're constantly having a 30,000, then possibly discuss it, but I would rather keep the city fees the same and advocate for covering the two events.
Okay, thank you. Good points. I'll respond to that later, Rajiv.
So I have two questions. How much is in the current reserve? And what would the reserves be used for potentially?
So right now we have $28,000 in the LAIF account. The board,
1,000?
28,000. This is just a rough number. I think it's 27 something or 28 something. And the board authorized me to transfer another $195,000 from our checking account into the LAIF account. So we do have quite a bit in there. I think I wasn't here when some of this stuff happened, but part of the reason they wanted to keep a healthy reserve is just in case something happened and the cities association needed the excess funds. Of course, we have insurance now, which really is very helpful, but
So,
yeah,
so you have 28 plus,
it will be.
how
plus.
much is the total reserve?
28 plus 195. 28 is
plus
in the LAIF, and the next item in LAIF, you will see that 195 needs to be transferred.
225K in there after that.
That's accumulated over some years.
Yeah, so the association has been here since 1990, became a JPA 2 years ago, and I'll comment on a few of those things as well. But the dollar amount they finally figured out last year. Tim has left, Sunnyvale being the fiscal agent. They've been through a lot of detail with Charlie. I saw another comment question. None? Okay, I'll open up to the public comment and then I have a couple of thoughts here that I want to share. Any member of the public in the room on the budget proposal? Anyone online only for this item?
No one has their hand up.
Seeing none, I close public comment and bring it back to the board. So I'll roll my questions and comments together. Man, I'm channeling Nisa. I just did that. I never do that. Seriously. I saw her and I did that. Any feedback from the city managers?
No, well, actually, he's not
Their meeting.
here anymore.
No, Tim just left.
No, Chris Constantine.
Chris was also.
Oh, sorry. But Chris from Los Gatos told me that he looked at it and he had no comments.
No, did they have a meeting? The city managers
Oh, yes,
association?
yesterday.
Oh, yesterday.
Yes.
Okay. And
That's
nothing?
lovely. Well, I've got updates from the meeting. If you do real quick.
No, only the budget.
No, we had no.
Yeah, there were no comments. There's no discussion.
Okay. So my couple of comments, Shelley touched upon both, that at the end of this meeting, whenever we have a motion or direction to include the comments discussed here, plus in addition, follow up with Sunnyvale to get a better estimate of the room rental, being aware that if it switches with the host city, because that's a fiscal year versus calendar year when the president shifts, a different city in the past, we're not going to name because it doesn't really matter, charges more than what today we think Sunnyvale charges. This year we chose Sunnyvale because my city doesn't have, this is a better location for multiple reasons. I'll leave it at that. So that could also change, but we need Shali to work with Sunnyvale. I would also recommend that she follows up with the Special District Risk Management Authority regarding insurance to get an idea if that's really going to be 10% or are we in for a surprise. And to develop a more detailed expenditure plan for summer and winter events, both with Rosemary and me, so that we have a better estimate of that. I really want to minimize surprises. We have done budget adjustments in the past, which is good. That is why we keep the extra and roll it into the reserves. Great idea, both of you, and actually all three of you said pretty much that. And to review if we can use that if needed for the winter event. Remember, the summer event coming up is in the prior fiscal year budget or the current fiscal year that we are in. So this June is that. The one we are planning is the next year, 2027. Couple of things I want to bring to your attention is, since we became a JPA 24 months ago, the board has done extensive work on policies, procedures, and guidelines. We have a reserves policy. We have been working more closely with the planning collaborative. We have the records retention policy tonight. We have the LAIF setup that we are still working on. Sunnyvale has become a fiscal agent. We are working on the website update. We also had to consider a request by the city of Cupertino to consider bylaw changes. All of this, each one of those needs legal time. That does cost the association. And Jani has been phenomenal, but we are tracking that. We are good for now. But in case we have to do more policies, and we already have some ideas, Rosemary suggested something to me the other day. I have some thoughts and Jani has. I really want you to be aware that a little or decent sized buffer is something that can be beneficial as we continue to formalize various organizational processes. That is why my personal take is not to bring it down to zero today, a net zero budget. And which is what I'm hearing from all of you, which is wonderful, because I didn't express my view to you till I heard all of that from you. Those are just my thoughts. To keep the operating expenses flat, as Kelly said, and then stay within the stay within the budget. Just shared all my thoughts and the big question was answered. Any other thoughts, Chief? Not received. What?
So, I mean, the fact that you got about 225K in reserves is almost a year's expenses.
Yeah.
So I would think that we're fine on the reserve side. So whatever excess we have, I think we should use it for something else. Because you already, you got like 1 year in the bank already. Right? That's my thinking.
Good thing.
What that is, I don't know. Maybe we cover the winter event, maybe we do something else, but
Thank you. One of the ideas that was proposed at the executive committee was that here is an opportunity for the board to consider funding, and this is in this budget report here as well. If the board wants to consider funding a region-wide program for members, we just started with the first study session. We have 3 priorities. Is there something based on the other 2 priorities or something else that we come up with? You guys are going to keep me busy. I love it.
Add one more thing, sorry. I do want to say thank you for managing the budget and expenses so well. Usually we don't hear such good news when I hear about budgets. So great job with that. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much. So we could consider, if we have that money, starting July 1, we could buy this in this calendar year, if we want to do something meaningful with one of our priorities. Remember, we had a list of 10 really, we chose 3. Here's an opportunity. Think about that and send me the information, or we can discuss it in the April meeting. So that extra money can be used for that, and certainly consider the winter event.
Can we designate it somewhere so that we can use it later, or we have to decide tonight, but we're,
We
okay,
don't have
good.
to decide tonight.
We can, okay,
No, we don't have to decide tonight.
okay, good.
Couple ways to do it. If we get great ideas.
But you're coming back in April with,
Yes.
okay,
Yes, and
okay, all right.
may I? Yes, and what I'm hearing tonight is the suggestion of perhaps the winter, we don't charge. you know, and that's still something that we could come back. That will reduce that amount. And you always want to have a little bit of cushion because the lake will be a little bit more, not as easy to access, right? So I think that would be an easy, well, let's just, you know, not put in the $5,000 for the winter event and not charge for the winter event. So, I mean, that's an easy one to, where you get the benefits of, you know, of the event and not, and the number will go down by 5,000.
To follow up on that, in my mind, one great option is to keep that option open. A flexible way to deal with it is keep that option open, but in the course of the year, if we want to have some kind of, I don't know what, some program as we move through our priorities, we could use the money there and then charge for the winter event, which we typically do, as well as look for sponsors. Just like the prior item we were talking, things continue to evolve. This will evolve based on what we all want to do.
But even if we, again, I think this conversation has gone on way too long to begin with, but the fact is, $5,000 to cover the winter event, we still have 27,000 left. Can't we just put that somewhere and make a decision about it later as to how we want to use it? Okay, then that's what I would.
I think we should move on.
Yeah, sounds good.
And I think we've got enough direction.
We don't need a motion on this, right?
No, just direction.
Okay, great. With that, let's move on to item number 6 and 908. LAIF, Local Agency Investment Fund Update. Again, Shally and Rosemary Kamai.
I'll keep this the overview super short. As you saw in the budget report, the resolution that established our LAIF account is from 2003. And the people who are on there, I don't know who they are. And so in order for me to do anything with the LAIF account, put money in or take money out or even close it or even open a new account, we need an updated resolution. And so the direction that I'm seeking tonight is which 3 officers do you want, I guess I'm an ex officio, but do you want to put in the resolution? And mind you, every time the officers change, we'll have to submit an update to LAIF. Maybe not a new resolution, but we'd have to update it.
Correct, because the banks need a name. Just as background, we discussed this at length at the executive committee, and the banks need a name, not the title. So it's not the president of the association, but every year the name has to be changed. The consistent person would be the executive director, Shally, and 2 more in addition. Whether we have the president plus the first vice president, or do we have the president plus the treasurer, we can only have 3 names. I think Jan, you wanted to say something.
Well, just the wording of the resolution is really interesting because it says you have to identify the individual by the name and the title. And those are the only people that can access the account or their successor. So I just think we'll be prepared that every year we'll do a resolution, but maybe we'll just say this person's a successor, but it's kind of a funny thing, but it's LAIF requirement. So we're going to go with it.
And this is an example of where it takes time. If you recall, some of you who were on the board prior year as well, prior calendar year, we have been talking about this LAIF for a while, because once Shally went back, then Rosemary suggested open a new one, put the 195 there, then we'll deal with pulling the 28 out. They said, no, it's the same organization, non-JPA, but JPA. The name is the same. You cannot do that. That is why it keeps on coming. And every time we have to go to Jani to get confirmation or what is the language. So some of that's why I was saying we need buffer as the organization continues to move. So those are my thoughts.
You need a motion then.
Yeah, I need public comment.
So do you have a recommendation as so Shally, and do you have a recommendation for the other 2 names, or do you need someone to suggest it?
You want to?
How about you, president and treasurer?
I don't know. I was going to say the executive director, the president, and the treasurer, because that makes sense.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion on the table and a second. Public comment in the room, seeing none. Any public comment online? Seeing
no one.
no one online, thank you, Shali. And bringing it back to the board, motion by Turner, seconded by Winker.
To adopt the motion is to adopt the resolution with those designated individuals. Great.
The executive director, the president, and the treasurer. Correct? Yes. Any other comments? Seeing none? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstention? Seeing none, unanimously approved. Thank you so much. Let's move on to item number 7, which is the records retention policy. It's 9:11. I promise you 10 more minutes. This is literally it. If you're okay, let's get this done rather than continuing. Okay, records retention policy is our attorney's item. Jen.
Okay, quickly, maybe I'll just do it briefly, and then if you have any questions, I'll answer the question. So we're trying to establish all the baseline for the organization. Andrew, my colleague, drafted this retention policy based on what Los Gatos has, since we always look to them, and to what some other JPAs have done. It's a pretty bare bones. It also does make a number. We're looking for paperless record retention, and we've designated certain records as permanent, thinking we don't have all that many records, so it'll be pretty easy to handle and keep the same rule for everything.
Questions? Open for public comment in the room? Anyone online?
No one online has a hand.
Close public comment, bring it back to the board. Motion to approve records retention, to adopt the resolution for records retention policy, moved by Risto. Seconded by Sally Meadows. Sorry, it's
More than one.
Sally Meadows. Yes.
Lots of greenery.
Any comment? Seeing none? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstention? None? Approved unanimously. Item number 8 is Legislative Action Committee update. The meeting was canceled tonight, so we'll move on to item number 9, Santa Clara County update. We have Steve Preminger with us. Steve, any update? Thank you so much. Santa Clara County, item number 10, Santa Clara County City Managers Association update. Any quick updates, Leslie?
Just real quick, we met yesterday. They talked about the Next Gen Committee, which is the summer internship for students. So that's, and that can also be year-long internship. So we heard about the Next Gen Committee. We had a great AI update from the city of San Jose. Fantastic presentation from their Chief Innovation Officer. And then talked with Leadership Academy and a few other things. So give it short.
Okay, wonderful. Great. Thank you so much. Executive Director update, item number 11, Shali.
Super fast. I sent everybody in the county as well as city manager, every council member in the county. Valley Water has a grants program, and you'll have the flyer in your inbox. I was going to read something from them, but all that information is in the flyer and my email. I also attended the city managers meeting as liaison from this organization. I just wanted to add that the council member symposium that they're planning, the planning will resume in the fall, and the program is slated for March 2027. And then many of you here are on the city selection committee, so I just thought I'd take the opportunity to please send me the address from where you'll take the meeting so that I can notice it on the agenda. It's a 15-minute meeting. I didn't want to make everybody drive. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you. With that, item number 12, joys and challenges. Perfect timing, 9:15. Joys and challenges. Anyone?
Do we skip to end since it's 9:15? That would be my joy. My challenge is I would like to go home.
Done.
To get to my kids with you.
Done.
All right.
The meeting is adjourned at 9:15 p.m. Thank you so much for your.
Overjoyed.
Thank you.
Actually,
And 9:20.